hope this works. Okay. We may have no sound on this recording.
Okay. Well,
So
we'll just have to see.
Right. Okay. So it would also help, Michelle, if you had the copy of Hip Hop Planet in front of you. Were you able to download at least the PDF file from your computer? That middle one.
This one. That one.
Yeah. Okay. What was that?
She hasn't.
Oh,
No.
okay. So let's see where that is in the modules. I think it's like at the very top, so you should be fine in getting it. Oops.
I can't remember which one I found it. When I grabbed it, it was in.
Let's see here. Let's have you do this first, Michelle. Because I think at this point you are only at, you haven't reached the point yet where you've actually downloaded it because it's in 1.2.1. So here's what you need to do. You need to make a Google Doc that says Writing Lab on it. Just make it the title Writing Lab. And then you're going to upload that file for every assignment that gets you to the 1.2.1 so that you can come down towards the middle and hit the CSU. This is not showing up, is it? My presentation is not showing up. Just not able to see that.
Oh,
can you go on to, let's see, shoot. This is weird. Why am I not presenting? Did I not hit this one? Present now. Your entire screen. Okay. Boy, this is going to be a fun recording. This will be like a comedy.
There we go.
There we go. Okay. All right. So then what you want to do, back to here. No, back to here. Okay. So it's in 1.2.1. So what you do is you just take that Google Doc that says Writing Lab, you submit it for every assignment up to 1.2.1, and then the actual document is this one that says CSU Hip Hop Reading. That's the one you want to download. So tell you what, let's give you a couple of minutes right now to do that so that you can be on pace with us. And you can even use that document to get you further along as well. But you definitely need to have this article because there's really not a lot to discuss unless you know what we're discussing. So I think what we can do in the meantime is to just take a look at what the requirements are. And then, Michelle, you can always come back to this recording a little later on and take a look at what we've done. But we want to make sure that
she says, so I just submit a blank doc.
Yeah, or you can write Writing Lab in the text as well, so to be both the title and in the text. Actually, what happens when we get on Canvas, when you submit something, like if I go to the speed grader, then I will actually see the title and the let's get somebody here who okay. It will say up here what the title of the document is. So I've seen that before where it says Writing Lab up there, it's fine. And then it's a blank page. So that works for me. I just need a signal that you wanted to make sure you were in the Writing Lab and then you'd come back to us, to these exercises and get them done. So I'm going to go ahead and let you know what the task is all about. The way this course is designed is the important skills of reading and writing are interrelated. So you want to make sure that you start with a question. And in this case, the question happens to be the power of hip hop music and what you think that power is. And so we're going to read something and we're going to teach you some skills on how to analyze what we read. And then this whole section that we do right now talks about the ideas, and it allows you to kind of put those ideas into your own perspective and to decide is this author right or wrong, or what are some other things that haven't been considered? And then you are writing a response that it's in the same conversation. It's entering the conversation with James McBride. And even though we're looking at 12 years ago, it's still relevant. The information, I think, is still relevant because of hip hop. And it has definitely taken a much stronger foothold in society today. So that's how the whole course is designed. It's taking you from an idea that you read about, you discuss the ideas, and then you kind of make your own addition to the conversation. So go ahead. Yeah.
I'm just pointing out someone else has joined us.
So hit that. We should be able to see.
Oh, no, it's just the presentation.
Yeah, it's just the presentation. Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. All right. So here's the prompt that you will find in 1.3.2 says, your task will be to compose a letter to James McBride with the purpose of letting him know what you think about the claims he makes about the importance and the power of hip hop in his essay. The first portion of the letter will be a summary where you show McBride that you understand the main points of his essay. The second portion of your letter will be a thoughtful and formal response to his ideas. So, do you mind, Ms. Paulson, if we kind of chat about this?
Mm-hmm.
I think modeling this time is going to be a really good idea, so that as we do continue to have some more of these, and hopefully other people will be able to join in, they kind of get the idea of how they need to talk about things.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely.
So we're going to take a look again at the Hip Hop Planet by James McBride. And we're going to look again at paragraphs 6, 7, and 8. Do you want to reread these, 6, 7, and 8?
Sure. All right. Starting at paragraph 6.
Yeah.
In doing so, I missed the most important cultural event in my lifetime. Not since the advent of swing jazz in the 1930s has an American music exploded across the world with such overwhelming force. Not since the Beatles invaded America and Elvis packed up his blue suede shoes has a music crashed against the world with such outrage. This defiant culture of song, graffiti, and dance, collectively known as hip hop, has ripped popular music from its moorings in every society it has permeated. In Brazil, rap rivals samba in popularity. In China, teens spray paint graffiti on the Great Wall. In France, it has been blamed unfairly for the worst civil unrest that country has seen in decades. Its structure is unique, complex, and at times bewildering. Whatever music it eats becomes part of its vocabulary, and as the commercial world falls into place behind it to gobble up the powerful slop in its wake, its metamorphosis into the next big thing. It is a music that defies definition, yet defines our collective societies in immeasurable ways. To many of my generation, despite all attempts to exploit it, belittle it, numb it, classify it, and analyze it, hip-hop remains an enigma, a clarion call, a cry of I am from the youth of the world. We'd be wise, I suppose, to start paying attention.
Okay, when I went back through this, the reason I picked those paragraphs is I think that this is where the main idea is for the article.
Mm-hmm.
When I read it, the first time I read it, so a few years ago, it is a rather older article, but I remember in the early 90s, maybe it was the late 80s, early 90s, you remember when hip hop came out and then we suddenly had this problem where we had to talk about what we should play on the radio, and they had to come with those warning labels. You remember all that?
Explicit parent advisories.
Yeah. I don't think students of today understand that world that we lived in. Do you have any memories from that time? Because you have, I don't know, do your children like hip hop?
Okay, absolutely. In fact, my son is a jazz musician.
Oh, yeah?
And they've introduced me to Kendrick Lamar, right,
Mm-hmm.
which is sort of grown out of this hip hop culture.
Mm-hmm.
And who is their other favorite is Flognaw is his name, Golf Wang, Chance the Rapper, and I forget the other names, but absolutely. And in fact, I would say this is so relevant today. My kids have to actually translate the music for me that we listen to sometimes, because it is so not my language. Like, it's born out of a culture that I am so not a part of.
Right.
And it speaks to issues that are so not a part of my daily life that that I don't even understand. So yes, my kids love hip hop. They listen to it, and I feel like they speak another language. In fact, I joke at my house that my son, he's 25, but who plays music and kind of lives in a little musical world, that he speaks hip hop, and I don't understand him. I have to ask him, I don't understand what you're saying, and they laugh and then say, "Oh, Mom, this is what we mean," or in the reference, this song, it's not a bad word what he's saying. He's talking about America, not a boy behaving badly to a girl, but about America behaving badly to a culture.
Oh my gosh.
And I go, okay.
That goes deep. That goes way deep.
Yes.
I remember at the time the commission, I forget the exact name of the commission, but they had to testify before Congress saying it's an emergency. We need to, stop this. And it didn't stop. And in fact, I saw one of the cable networks, they've actually got kind of like one of their little short run series programs on, the revival of hip hop or something. It's 30 years old. Hip hop is 30 years old.
Right.
It's
history. It's like,
because I remember this, and especially the part where it refers to Elvis and the Beatles. Now, I was not old enough for that. Certainly you weren't either. But I remember seeing things about how, Elvis Presley was just evil.
Right.
And, Elvis the Pelvis. And so I listened to his music today, especially the early music, and I'm thinking, boy.
Right. This is like rated G.
I know. But, everybody thought at the time that if the young people of that day listened to that music, they were going to become corrupt and immoral and all the other good stuff. So I think the best way bride's major claim, because did you find a sentence in this where you could just point at that sentence and say, here's the major claim?
In one of the paragraphs that we read specifically, or anywhere?
Because it's
I would say in paragraph 8, since we just read those two, that there's two sentences that I'm underlining right now. One of them is about halfway through that says, "It is a music that defies definition, yet defines our collectives, societies in immeasurable ways." And then even kind of the very last sentence, which is obviously his opinion, which is, "We'd be wise, I suppose, to start paying attention."
Very good.
If I had to take those, I would take those two out if I wanted to say, this is what this man is saying. And
I love
this is what he wants us to do.
Yeah, because and in the rest of the essay, that's going to, whatever you go back to that paragraph that you've already underlined, it does relate to every other paragraph. And that's how you know that it's the major claim, because it does relate to all the rest of it that we need to pay attention to, especially the clarion call. It's a weird word.
I would have to look up clarion in the dictionary.
But I'm looking at, okay, so if it's many generations of my generation, and I'm pretty sure I could put myself in the author's generation. I didn't look him up. I should have. I've looked him up a long time ago, but I don't remember. But he's probably around my age at least, anyway. And so I would identify that, despite all attempts to exploit it, belittle it, and analyze it, it remains an enigma. Now that one I know is a mystery, but a clarion, a call of I am. So I see kind of like a megaphone. What comes to mind to me is like a megaphone. Like, I want everybody to know this for the clarion call. So maybe if we look that up and find out. Do you know what it might mean, Michelle? What if you were to guess the definition, what do you think that definition might be? Yeah, well, Miss Paulson's looking it up. Maybe you can kind of just, what if you were to replace that word in there with something more in your vocabulary, what do you think it would be?
I'm looking it up, Michelle, using my phone. I have an app on my phone called the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, which is great. You want to? Are you still here, Michelle? Are you listening to us? Did you get lost trying to figure out?
We need to make sure she has it. The worst part about this chat is that, when you're usually in a chat on a computer with somebody else, it shows bullets or something.
Right, the little dots.
This does not.
So
and
we don't know.
I've learned it does take them some time to get there. But it's just, I'm just trying to, it almost sounds like it's clear too. That clarity, I see clarity in that word, and that means very clear. So I'm thinking that, but.
Well, I can tell you, I'll tell you what the definition here says, that it is a medieval trumpet with clear, shrill tones. And also, and as an adjective, that it is brilliantly clear. So it's a loud and clear, and the example is a clarion call to action. So it's actually...
It is related to clear.
It's related to clear, and it's related to music, as in it comes from a trumpet. So he's a pretty crafty writer to be using words, musical words.
Cool. Okay, so this is actually, we've actually identified 3 sentences here. So how could we paraphrase this into one sentence that would be used as the main idea?
You're asking me? Do I get to answer?
Well,
you?
I can ask.
We want Michelle.
Michelle can try. Can tune in too. I mean.
Okay, so let's read them. The 3 of them again that we added. It is a music that defies definition, yet defines our collective societies in immeasurable ways. To many of my generation, despite all its attempts to exploit it, belittle it, numb it, classify it, and analyze it, hip-hop remains an enigma, a clarion call, a cry of I am from the youth of the world. We'd be wise, I suppose, to start paying attention. So go ahead.
Well, what strikes me is that the phrases that really jump out is, of course, to start paying attention, and that this is a way that hip hop speaks for the youth of today. So I'd probably put those 3 together, and that that hip hop is the means by which young people communicate today, that speaks to their world as they perceive it. Something like that. What's funny, and it's a movie rated PG-13. It's called Be Cool. I don't know if you ever saw it. I love the movie because it's a parody, first of all, of the music business and kind of the movie business too. It was a sequel to Get Shorty.
Okay.
Elmore Leonard was the original novelist who wrote these stories, and he had such an odd little way of writing. I like reading a lot of Elmore Leonard stuff, but Be Cool, John Travolta plays an ex-mobster who, in the first movie, he was a movie director. Now he's deciding he wants to get out of the movie business and into the music business. And so he finds this young lady who's beautiful voice, wonderful singer, and she's trying to break into the music business, and she's being manipulated by a manager and everything like that. So he's going to rescue her. Part of the rescue team is played by Cedric the Entertainer. He's a producer of hip hop, and he's got these hip hop guys. And it is so funny the way that just kind of plays off of each other, because he's rich and he's a good dad and he lives in this posh neighborhood. And then he's got his gangsters and he's part of the mob and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so there's Russians involved. It's a long part of the story. But the Russians come in at the same time that the producer and the gangsters are saying, hey, we want our money that you owe us. And the Russian comes in, interrupts the whole thing, and the guy says, hey, we were here first. And the Russian calls him the N-word.
Mm.
And Cedric the Entertainer has the best story that he says, isn't that typical? He says, here we are. And he explains all the benefits of hip hop. It is a beautiful speech that I wish like crazy I could show them, but I can't because he shoots the Russian. And so that's it. But it's a contribution to society. They contribute to society. Clothes. It's not just music. It's clothes. It's an industry. It's the economy.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a voice born out of poverty in a really rough neighborhood in the Bronx, that it is a culture. And it's part of our culture. It's American culture.
Kanye West calls it like drugs. He calls it like they're producing a drug that the majority of the population is addicted to. It's ironic. He sings a whole big song about how ironic it is that I think he calls it crack music.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about how it's the minority's means of earning money, exploiting themselves, selling it to, and allowing the majority of the population to buy it and feed off of it.
Mm-hmm.
But how it's still, they don't understand it, even is what he's saying in his song. I forget. I think it's called crack music.
And I've looked at, I have a nephew just started Northern Arizona University, and his tweets, I cannot understand his tweets to say, the ones I do understand, sometimes I think you should not be saying this. And so I've become like his conscience, but it is the counterculture voice. And there's always been countercultures. The hippies were counterculture, the Gen X's were counterculture.
Rock and roll back in the day, yeah.
So definitely the major claim would be that we need to pay attention to this part of our culture.
I would say, too, I would argue that hip-hop is so much more sophisticated than rock and roll even, or anything the hippies produce, that because it's so, like, I like how he says it's a music that defies definition, yet defines our collective societies. Like, that means that there's like a push and a pull. You can't say exactly what it's about, because and it's about everything at the same time. Like, it's very complex. And I think it's no surprise that Kendrick Lamar won the Pulitzer Prize a couple years ago for it, that it's cutting edge. It's cutting edge. It's so far ahead, I don't understand it. That's how I feel about it. I don't understand.
Well, Michelle, we'll give you an easy question here. Do you like hip hop?
We'd know if she was gone, wouldn't we? She would have disappeared, but.
Are you there?
Oh, there we go. I listen to all music, so yeah.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
And I think what I'm getting at is, do you feel that it is a voice for you that kind of expresses how you feel at times? Yes.
Yeah.
Good. So
That's
hopefully this is something that will inspire you to do the writing that we have for that's why we write, and especially with any writing, it should be an expression of you. And hip hop lyrics often do that for a lot of
Great
people.
topic.
Okay, so how does he support his major claims? So what we want to look at is the type of evidence that he puts out there if he's saying we need to pay attention to this part of the culture. And so I think I like the fact that he gave us the history of how hip hop came about, and especially this part in paragraph 9 where it said the where was it about the park? You had to get a permit to go to the to be in the park where this was all born out. Maybe it's not in this paragraph. The Bronx is the hallowed or holy ground of hip hop, the place where it all began. Visitors take tours through this neighborhood now, care of a handful of 40-ish old-timers who point out the high and low spots of hip hop's birthplace. Did you remember?
The first sentence of paragraph 10 says, it is a telling metaphor for the state of America's racial landscape that you need a permit to hold a party at the same parks and playgrounds that produced the music that changed the world.
Yeah. Now, that doesn't really support the thesis. I just like the emphasis on it. I think the little trivial thing about it makes it interesting. But certainly, giving us the information of where this all started, that kind of helps us to understand its power. So I know a little bit about the Bronx. I know that it's a really rough part of New York. Isn't it on the other side of the river from Manhattan?
I don't know.
I've never been there. I've never been. I've never been anywhere farther east than Denver. So, but that was part of it. So it's providing that history. That's part of how he's trying to build this up. What evidence did you kind of?
Well, I think he goes on in paragraph 10 to talk about the conditions that created the music, like poverty, the life. I remember the first time I read this years ago, the discussion about the life expectancy of Black men in the U.S. ranking below men of Sri Lanka. And I actually looked it up. I was so, like, that hurts. That hurts to hear that in our country, that if that's true. And so I wanted to see, is that really true? And I looked it up, and it horrifyingly, I don't know about Sri Lanka, actually. I didn't look up Sri Lanka. But first I wanted to know, can you really tell the life expectancy of different races? And you sure can. And it's horrifyingly sad, the truth of it.
I know for sure, in fact, probably, definitely one of the statistics we could look up and find is that certainly there's more young Black. I mean, the percentage of young Black men who are arrested, convicted, for whatever, there's a lot more of that population incarcerated, and certainly I'm sure that would, that's not a far leap from.
Well, you and I got to hear an author last year and read a book who talks about incarceration. The new discussion is that it's just a transformation of slavery in our country, that it has moved from the Jim Crow laws into incarceration.
Which what makes this article so important. And again, supporting, we need to start paying attention, because that's exactly what the message out there of a lot of these artists is that we're not people. We're not treated equally in this society. And so they point that out quite graphically in some instances. Although strangely enough, the very first instance, in fact, before we started this, what's the song that they mentioned that the author was hearing? The Good Times. So it's the Rapper's Delight.
Rapper's Delight, yeah.
So I played it on YouTube, and I wish I could play it for you now, Michelle, but I would highly recommend look it up on YouTube and play it. The problem is when we do this hangout, it doesn't feed through the YouTube. But I listened to that and I thought, oh yeah, I remember that, and I loved it. I love the song, and it's a 15-minute song. And some of it makes sense, some of it doesn't. Some of it I thought, they say a bad word. But not really. Certainly not like with some of them. But it was, this music it's so rich with that culture. It can be positive, it can be negative, but it covers such a wide range. But it is a voice for those who are what we call marginalized. So anything else that we should probably point out as being a strong piece of evidence to support his claim.
Michelle, can I ask you, if you look at paragraph 11 on page 3, did you find the article, by the way? Were you able to look at it?
Good.
So if you look at paragraph 11, that starts with that is why after 26 years, I have come to embrace this music. Can you pick out maybe one part of a sentence or one sentence that you think supports his idea that hip hop is important and we need to listen to it, that supports that idea? This is so beautifully written, actually, reading it again.
It is. I'll want to take a look because I know it's been updated.
Mm-hmm.
It's been changed a little bit, but I hope this one is still in it.
I bet it is, because I had just pulled it up last year, like recently in the last months. Well, it got mailed out, I think, as we were starting to talk about, maybe it went well with Incarceration Nation. I think that's why some people were thinking about teaching it
probably
again.
Was part of the module.
So I remember reading it, pulling it out and reading it just as part of that. Well, and it's perfectly relevant now listening to, Kendrick Lamar has like soared as a really public voice of hip hop that is amazing. And he's been awarded for it, like in an award that traditionally is not given to musicians like that. So it's mainstreaming in a way that hasn't been seen before.
And I like that trend that they're getting into anyway with awarding. We are needing to look at cultures that are not typically looked at.
Mm-hmm. The last 3 sentences. Okay, I'll read them for you. So, over the years, the instruments change, but the message is the same. The drums are pounding out a warning. They're telling us something. Our children can hear it.
I love it.
Isn't that so dramatic?
That's so strong because it's, like you said, still related to the music.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the part that irritates a lot of adults.
The music. The actual music.
Especially when you're waiting in traffic and suddenly behind you there's this huge Hummer vehicle that's got smoke pouring out.
Right.
And the boom, 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 boom. Yeah. And you just want to, but I think that's very telling.
I know that I have actively been like studying it since my son sort of introduced me to like the Kendrick Lamar and I love Kanye West because it just sounds so good.
Right.
But I'll be listening to it in the car and I'll think, if somebody sees me, okay, Michelle, also I'm a super white woman with light colored hair, mid 40s, like I'm the last person, if you saw me, that you would think would be rocking out to Kendrick Lamar, whom I do not even understand. But I'm listening because I'm an English major, I'm an English teacher. I want to understand this. I can tell it's important. That's what.
Right.
And I'm listening to it. And sometimes I think people are going to look at me and be like, what is she doing? Like listening to this music. But I'm really into it.
Now here's the part I want to know. Are your children embarrassed when you do that?
Sometimes. Yeah, a little bit. Sometimes. Because you do have to turn it up. Wouldn't you agree, Michelle? It's meant to be listened to loud.
You got to listen to it loud, right?
Yes, I would say. They are pounding. And that's what I think I'm drawn to it, because I do feel the desperate nature of it, and like the desperate call of it, and that I'm trying to figure out what they're saying because I don't understand. Like I don't know where they're coming from. I didn't grow up like that, and I don't know, and I want to understand.
So we can summarize a little bit the positive contributions of hip hop. So what I heard us discuss was, first of all, the language. Mm-hmm. It gives a language that kind of separates so that the young people can communicate with each other, but it kind of leaves the adults out.
Exactly.
And that, I do think that can be important, although we do hope that occasionally our young people talk to us.
Right.
But what were some other positive contributions do you think that?
Well, obviously it's art. I've thought of it a lot of like poetry, that it reminds me a lot of like stream of consciousness poetry that I also struggle to, things I struggle to understand and study that have a surface level. Like it looks like this on this, it looks vulgar, loud, and gross sometimes, the lyrics, but it's deep with meaning. So I feel like it's a very important art that has been born,
right,
that contributes so much to society. So I think that's valuable.
And I know that it wasn't said directly in here, but when he starts talking about, especially the first part where he's there with the big guy, a dude wearing a do-rag, there is a look that goes with hip hop and the clothing. And in fact, several of these hip hop artists went on to become clothing designers. And so it's also in fashion. So it's not just what you hear, but what you see.
Right.
So I think fashion definitely is another contribution to our culture. And certainly the awareness, making people aware of what this young generation is feeling.
Right.
And adults aren't listening. Well, fine, you're not going to listen to us. You're not going to understand anything we have to say. So, okay. And we should have said where we found those. So like
Michelle,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, so Michelle, what we're doing now too, when we're talking about where do we find those, is Mrs. Campbell and I are looking back through the article, and we're trying to find and underline exact lines and sentences where we're finding some evidence of the things that we're talking about. Because when it becomes time for you to write papers about the article, you always need to reference the article and come back to it. So think of it as like home base. The article is like the place. Well, I'm a big baseball fan, so I always think of that. But where you're coming back, you're grounding your argument or your discussion in the actual reading. Because, we could start talking and our conversation could fly out the window.
Which
we just
will do.
Sometimes we do that. But when you're writing it down in an essay, it has to be grounded back in the paper. And you'll even make references to sentences, like you'd put those in quotation marks. So that's why it's important, as we're thinking about it, that we go back to the article. And I'm actually writing on the copy of mine in a colored pen, so that later on when I'm writing about it, I can say, oh, okay, so this sentence right here in paragraph 4 talked about something important about hip hop.
And there are a couple of the activities that we did before this one that does ask them to do some annotation. And it's every student needs to realize that we English teachers do not read it the first time and get it the first time.
No, not
we
even.
have to keep going back and through and analyze. Now, I'm sure that we probably could analyze a lot more, because we like doing that.
Sure. And we have lots of practice at it.
But what we try to do is give you tools so that we know that nobody could read these and get it the first time. And in fact, you want to continue to read it, because then you're going to find something you didn't see the first time. And so, and that's also why the paragraphs are numbered. When we get into the actual writing instructions, anytime you use a quote from one of these articles, you just have to put in parentheses PAR for paragraph and then the paragraph number. Okay. So your response. Okay, this is kind of the second read, and so it's explained in the lessons. In fact, it's actually in the one that we had you to get to, where the first read is the with the grain read. So you read it so you can understand it right. But the second time, you want to go through and you want to see, is there something he missed? Is there something that I could add, information I could add to that? And with me, I think he does kind of leave out the fashion part of it. Now, I don't know if in 2007 it was known at that point. I think there were a few artists. There was one in particular, and I forget what his name was. But it's almost like he he went into hip hop as a stepping stone into the fashion industry.
Okay.
And he made more money in the fashion industry than he did in the hip hop. And I think that part isn't referenced, but it's something that I already knew about. And I remember the dresses. Remember parachute pants?
Oh, I hate to say that I actually had some.
I think that's a direct result of hip hop.
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of the precursor to the baggy pants. And so I wished he had gone a little bit more maybe into, and maybe it wasn't anything important to him, but to me, I kind of wish he'd gone into that. Was there anything that you think he might maybe just glanced over or he left out, or is there kind of a counter argument maybe that could be made here?
Well, I know one of the biggest criticisms of hip hop is its like vulgarity. Like it is explicit sometimes to the point that, like, if that's what I mean about if I'm listening to it in my car and I have a window down or I think somebody can hear it, I might be almost ashamed, like I'm not listening to this for bad reasons or whatever. And I think he didn't talk anything about that, like that is something important to address. It's been explained to me that it's code, basically, like it isn't what it says it is, like that surface meaning that has other meanings, like almost they're metaphors when they're talking about relations between a boy and the girl. That's not actually what they're talking about. They're talking about something much deeper, right? But so I don't know. I feel like he could have gone a little bit deeper, but I think I don't know. It's a short article. He didn't write a whole book about it.
This is true.
He's kind of glazing over that.
And looking at the type of document it is, so we know it was published in National Geographic, so that publication is known more for, it's a teaching magazine. It's how you learn about the world around you. And so this was a cultural piece that he wrote. But it is the one I remember the clearest. It is this whole commission that was formed. And then there were stations that they said, we are not playing this music. And then it became a First Amendment issue. And so, but if it is this code, obviously that code is to push the adults away. And
I think sometimes people can make an argument so this hip hop, it represents a culture, but does it also poverty and violence? Does it not draw some people into poverty and violence because it's cool? So now this culture is cool. It's cool to talk about the pain and the death and what makes somebody in poverty cool. Does that draw people who may have other opportunities not to be poor and not to become involved in violence and not marginalized? Does it make it cool to be that way? And is that negative? Like that might be an argument that is worth people talking about. Does it glorify a lifestyle that maybe nobody would or should choose? Maybe they were born into it and they don't have a choice, but what about people who did? Is it good to glorify violence and suffering?
That would be my objection to it. But the problem is there's a lot of the hip hop out there that's just fun. It's fun, it's funky, and so and this kind of also goes along with almost a racial profiling in that, if you have a few that engage in a behavior, and now you're going to blame everybody who also belongs to the same kind of either national group or racial group or whatever. And so I think that because for one thing, I would want to know, is there a difference between rap and hip hop? In fact, Michelle, would you say there is a difference between rap and hip hop, or are they two separate genres?
Oh, I think they're kind of separate.
Okay.
Can you tell me then, Michelle, just in your own mind, how are they separate? Like if somebody asked you what's rap, what's different about rap
Yeah.
and hip hop than if like
What's one thing that's different between how rap is not hip hop?
mhm. Tyler the Creator. That's the name of this new hip hop guy that my kids spend thousands of dollars to go to his. He has a carnival every year. It's at Dodger Stadium parking lot called Flogna Golf Wang. He's also a clothing designer, and he's a phenomena. You just think the music style is different.
Okay.
Okay.
I can see that because it does to me the connotation of rap. That's my negative side. Hip hop is more fun and positive.
Gotcha.
That's what I'm thinking. But I've noticed that as I've taught this module, that there are students who will say, no, it's different. Or there will be those who say it's the same. So, and I think as hip hop, if rap is part of that, then it's going to bring in that negativity. And that's where, adults object to it. And that's why they would say we should not be playing this. It is, as you said, can contribute to more negative living. So, and then that you would want to think about what do you say to that person. And I know that's why I appreciate McBride's, because he is of our generation and he is telling us why it is a good thing. So that would be the good counter argument. Is he wrong about something?
What do you think, Michelle, as we're talking about it, and do you think this guy
pretty well got it right,
James McBride, is there anything you noticed that you think he might be wrong about? He talks about himself a little bit in the first couple paragraphs about who he is.
Especially that nightmare paragraph.
As a father.
Yeah.
Thinking.
Yeah.
Nightmare. I live on a hip hop planet. That's what he says. I haven't been able to read the whole thing yet, so you're not sure. Well, as you do read it, think about these questions that are on here.
And these are questions that, as those of you listening on the recording, these questions here are going to be a part of the letter, because part of interacting in writing is that you are adding to a conversation. So that's kind of the beauty of writing, is that even though, McBride wrote this back in 2007, so that would make you guys, you probably toddlers.
5, 4, 3.
Right. You still have the opportunity to tell him, what you appreciated about the article, but then also to add your own information. And this is the kind of information that you're going to be adding when you actually do that writing. Is there something that he did not look at? Is there something that you'd like to kind of, not in kind of a sarcastic way, but just say, hey, here's something you didn't look at.
Sure, or clarify. Still, maybe there's your viewpoint, especially being of the younger generation that he's talking about. Maybe you have a lot to add to his argument, even of like, well, he didn't go far enough here explaining the importance, or you can put it into words that he can't.
Yeah. It's interesting that the nightmare is in italics. Do you think he had a reason for putting all of that in the italics? How does that impact how we read this? What do you think it signifies?
I think it makes it somewhat clear that it's not true.
Right.
That it's a dream. It's like different, you know. It's great. I mean, he's
Yeah.
obviously a very good writer. So by using something like that, like writing literally different, like slanted,
Yeah.
italicized with letters, sets it apart. And it begins, you know, this is my nightmare. And then you see everything that follows is slanted. It becomes kind of obvious just by looking at it that this is not true. This
Right.
was a dream. Or
Now,
is
I
a
have
dream.
had students in the past who thought this was a real event.
Sure.
And
Well,
so-
it sounds like it.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And so I think that is a purposeful way of trying to tell them it looked just a dream, you know. And it also, since it is the introduction, obviously he's had this is an argument he's having with himself.
Right.
And so the other part of the argument is that he's really doing a good job there. So what was that Michelle has added?
She said, I haven't been able to read the whole thing yet. So
Okay.
She's not sure.
All right. That's fine. That's fine. Please, before anybody starts writing, please read it twice.
At least.
At least twice. And listening to this conversation that we're having is good, but there's a lot to it. I mean, there's 2.5 pages of this article. And it is a good read. It really is a fun read too. So, okay. So what I want to do now is just go over what your responsibilities are for the writing. And actually, we might have to go back to one of the earlier slides. So what are you writing? So if we go back to the prompt, oh, well, thank you. That was very nice of you.
What does it say?
It's saying that it's held back the emails, which was really good because last year, Mr. Short and I were having a writing lab, and an email came through that was very confidential, and it just popped right up. So I had to actually edit that out before I made the record or put the recording up. So here's back at slide 2. Your task will be to compose a letter. So this first time, we're just going to be writing a letter to James McBride with the purpose of letting him know what you think about the claims he makes about the importance and power of hip hop in his essay. And notice the format is given to you. So this first one is going to be pretty easy because your format's been decided for you. The first portion of the letter will be a summary where you show McBride you understand the main points of his essay. Now, here's how I interpret that. You don't need to tell him all the details because he already knows them. Instead, it just becomes your interpretation of his major claim. So, and since it is, especially with the 3 sentences there that we've identified in paragraph 8, you need to paraphrase that into your own words.
Simpler words. He writes, I want to say, Michelle, and anyone else listening, to encourage you that he writes kind of fancy, I would call it. He's obviously a writer who's been published a lot, and he's an author, and he uses vocabulary words that even I might not use in my own writing. So don't be shy about making it, put it into words that the student in the next classroom might understand. So you're trying to kind of break it down and make it even more understandable than he did by putting it in your own words.
Now, remember that it's your voice. This is a conversation. It's a conversation that happens virtually, not in a physical way. But I am sure that, Michelle, if you were to meet, who was the one you liked?
Oh, Kendrick Lamar?
Yeah. How would you talk to him? You certainly would not talk with this elevated vocabulary, and you would never talk like that. And even though McBride uses a lot of these fancy words, you can still tell that there's kind of this informality. You know, there's a certain level of informality. So that's how we want to hear your voice. We don't need to hear, you don't need to make it sound like you have a degree in college, because you don't yet. So, and that's okay. We'd rather hear your own voice. Okay, so that was the task, is to write a letter. Let me go back here. Now, we're going to say business letter, but that's only for formatting. Don't think of this as the tone as business. Think of this more, like I said, as the conversation. I always make the same mistake. I always press the wrong button. Okay, present. All right. So you're writing a letter, and it will be in the form of a business letter. We'll show you what that format looks like. What's the subject? Has hip hop made significant contributions to our culture? So that's the whole content of the letter. And so even though you're telling what he already knows, you're telling him, okay, here's how I interpreted what you said the contribution was.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to add to that contribution. We're doing kind of a soapstone analysis of this. This is an activity that kind of sets up the letter, but occasion. And here's why occasion is important. It kind of sets up how you're going to talk. So this is, like I was saying before, it's a virtual conversation. So even though you were probably not able to read this article in 2007,
Mm-hmm.
You have it now. And especially now that 12 years later, hip hop is well established as a cultural, and it's still a cultural enigma.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a language we don't understand, that makes it a mystery. So you've seen this in 2019, and now what you want to do is you want to kind of update McBride. I see that as an occasion.
Mm-hmm. Sure, absolutely.
So it kind of helps you focus on how you want to set the tone in your writing. So to whom are you writing? Well, this one's easy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, James
Mm-hmm.
McBride.
Yeah.
Again, you don't have to keep up with his language level. He'll be fine at your own language level. You also, though, don't know him. So you can't be, hey, Jimmy boy.
Right.
You have to be somewhat formal because you haven't met him. But, he has set a tone of some informality in a formal way. And so that's kind of what you want to do too. Okay. So what is it that you need to do? And this comes from the task. So you're going to inform McBride the extent to which you agree or disagree with this claim. It's just an expository letter that you're writing. So who is speaking through the letter? This is a conversation element that I spoke of. You are a freshman in high school, and you are reacting to his opinion of hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
So Michelle, you especially since you listen to that music, and I think it's a benefit that you listen to all kinds of music.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that becomes part of what you want to add, that it's not just hip hop that's done this. It is, and then you can pick another genre and kind of go into that. Remember, the purpose of this is to add to the conversation. And so McBride wants to know what you think. And so he doesn't need to hear what he's already told you. He would like to know what you can add to that.
Yes.
Okay. So the tone, how do you want to make it sound? Obviously, you want to be respectful. I don't think there's any need for us to cut. I know that for some, when they read that first part, that it could potentially make someone defensive. But that's why it's in italics, because he doesn't want us to take it that seriously.
It's not real.
Right. He's realized it's just a dream, and I have to kind of work on myself. Should be academic.
Yes.
So, you're not going to start the letter with, what's up? I don't think they say that anymore. But, it is for the academic setting. So it is going to be a formal tone, but not collegial, master's degree. You don't need any of that. Academic formal. Like I said, you don't know who he is specifically, but as an adult, how you would speak to him.
Mhm.
Okay, so what I have here is just the diagram. You had a business letter. And when you go into Google Docs, as soon as you hit the new document, everything can be left justified. That's how a business letter. This is called block letter style. The reason it's block letter is because there's no indentation in front of the paragraph. There's only a space. Everything is single spaced, and everything is over on the left justified. So when you bring up a new Google Doc, it's automatically going to have things up for you. Now, this is the sender's address. And oops, no, you do not have to write your own address. If you would like to use the address of the school with Kern Learn, so Michelle, yours is 5800 Sundale Avenue, and the zip is 93309. And on this side of town, it's
501 South Mount Vernon. And I don't remember.
I think it's an 04.
04?
Yeah.
933.
We're not going to mail this. So
it's okay.
It's only practice. So you can put in the school's address, and that's fine. Notice there's no name up here. And that's particular to the new business letter style, is that it says wonderful company, but the actual person who's sending it down here is John Smith. So the name is not up here. I discovered that a few years ago, and I went, when did that start? Okay, then the date, I would go ahead and use, the date of publication. So hopefully it's tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
But
the due date.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then who you're sending this to. For the purposes of this assignment, just write James McBride and then the C/O for in care of National Geographic. I think that'll work for our purposes now.
Mm-hmm.
So just make it James McBride, National Geographic, in care of National Geographic. We could look up the address later to find out where that is, but we're not going to worry about that. Okay, and then this is called the salutation because it's the dear part, so it's saluting somebody, acknowledging them. And then now what you're going to do for the formatting of what we said, remember that the first part is to kind of summarize as you see McBride's major claim, putting that in. The second part would be your addition to the conversation. What can you add? What did he might miss? Is there another genre you want to look at? Go ahead.
I just want to point it out too for Michelle, and that the first paragraph, the summary that you're going to write, does not include your opinion at all about James McBride's article. You're just going to put it into your own words. So all summaries are like that. They're just retelling or restating what somebody else said. And then the second paragraph, you get to add in how you feel about what he said. But I want you to know that because in all of your writings for the rest of your high school years, and if you go to college, people are going to ask you to summarize things. And I want you to know that a summary never includes your opinion, but it's very important for you to be able to provide objective. That means no opinion, not revealing how you feel about something, because it makes people take you more seriously. If you can repeat what somebody said without showing whether you liked it or didn't like it or agreed with it or didn't agree with it, when you finally do state your opinion, it's more valuable because you seem more knowledgeable and more reasonable. Mm-hmm. So it's an important skill as you grow up to be an adult, that you are able. Not a lot of adults are able to do that even very well, and they discredit themselves by revealing how they feel without being able to just restate somebody's argument. So it's good practice to summarize that and keep your own opinion out of it altogether.
And you would want to transition at the beginning of that second sentence that shows that which direction you want to take that argument in. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I've wondered if you've ever considered the genre of blah, blah, blah. or I'm surprised that you didn't talk more about blah, blah, blah. And then you add in your own opinion, and it would be good if you could also use some evidence too, and that can come strictly from, you know, a lot of music, so you can pull it from anything you know about what this reminds you of. Okay. I would say that this will be at least, so you have 2 paragraphs, and then the third paragraph is just kind of a, thank you for writing this, or I enjoyed writing, it's kind of a sign off. And then your sincerely, and then your name. And you don't need to include all this information. You're not a business. So you can just put your name, and there's usually 5 spaces between the sincerely and your name. And that way it would give you the ability to sign your name. But since everything's going to be submitted electronically, don't worry about actually hand signing the letter. You don't have to worry about that. We're just looking at the format, making sure that you can get that format down. Okay, and here is the outline one more time. I have this a little different. I did say introduce yourself and how you came to write this letter, which does set up the purpose of the letter, but that would only be 1 sentence, and it's its own paragraph. My name is Michelle McReynolds. I am writing to you from Bakersfield, California, and as a freshman, I just read your feature, Hip Hop Planet, and I wanted to comment on it. That's all you need. And then you can do the summary, and then you can do the reasons that you agree, or the addition to the conversation. And then you thank them and for reading the letter too, for taking the time to read your letter, and then that's where you put in the signature. So this is your outline on how to do that. These are some questions that you want to keep in mind as you go through what the content of your letter is going to be. How has it contributed to today's society? Do you agree with those? How do you know? What is your reaction? So this is just, if you get stuck, what can I talk about? Pick one of these questions to answer. Okay. The letter is due. Okay, now here's the funky part. I do not, all assignments are technically due on Fridays.
Right.
But I know that because of busy schedules, students often do the majority of their work on the weekends. So I like to give the weekend too.
Yes.
This is a 3-day weekend. We've got Labor Day coming up. Yay! Yay for us. And then, so Monday is a holiday, and technically there's nothing assigned on holidays.
Right.
The only reason it says Monday, September 2nd is that it could be done by tomorrow night at 11:59.
Yes.
And then you have a free weekend. Or enjoy Friday and do it on the weekend. So the letter should be turned out. Now, Michelle, here's what's different about you. We did have one other student add, but because he has just added, we need to get him caught up. So you're not going to have a peer review. Don't worry about it. If you were in Ms. Paulson's class, the letter will get a peer review assigned at 12 a.m. on Tuesday. So when you wake up in the morning on Tuesday, provided you have got the essay in before that time, you will have a peer review. We do want you to type it in the correct format because this is good practice for the business letter style. It's a good time to start. I want you to take a look when you're, now, Michelle, again, don't worry about the peer review because you're not getting one. But for the rest of you, the peer review help gives you instructions, including a little video on how to find it. But here's what you have to do. On 1.3.4, when you get there, you're going to download the Google form that's there. Then you're going to go back to 1.3.3, which is where you submitted the letter. In the little section in the upper right-hand corner where it says success, because you successfully submitted the assignment, there will be a link that appears that has the name of that student underneath it. Just click that link, their letter will pop up. Then the form you downloaded, fill out the information. You'll want to make sure that you change the share permission on that to anyone at the current high school district, so that Ms. Paulson can see it, somebody else can see it. Then you copy and paste the link in the comment section of the peer review. Oh, this is a mistake. They should say 1.3.4. Oh. Okay. So what? Wait, no, it's right. You have to go to the person's add comment. What happens is, if we take a look at, this is Speed Grader, and it's similar to this format. You're going to see the essay right here in this part. You might see the rubric, you might not, but there is a section that says comment. This is where you're going to paste that URL from the Google Doc, that shared Google Doc, and then you submit it. That way the person will copy and paste it into a new tab, and they can see what they wrote on the paper. Okay. This is going to take practice, and it's going to be a little confusing, and Michelle's kind of sitting there going, ha, 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 ha.
Yeah, you don't have to do it.
It's valuable to have a peer review. And Michelle, I'm glad somebody did come in, because the next time around there will be a peer review. The reason peer reviews are important is that it helps you focus on something in someone else's work, and they're doing you the same favor. We are not going to have you grade the other person's paper. You don't have the credentials for that. So what we do is we just have you focus on what we've already talked about. In fact, here's what you're going to do. You're going to do a soapstone for that person's essay. So you've already had practice with the soapstone earlier, doing this for McBride's article. Now you're going to do it for the letter. Okay. So Michelle, that's all we have. I know that you haven't quite got to where you need to be yet. You may get up to the writing lab part, and do you feel like you could write the letter now without a lot of review kind of stuff taking you through this? Do you feel comfortable enough now to write it according to these instructions?
Yes, good.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, good.
Okay, excellent. So just make sure that you have that writing lab submitted up to the double check 1.3.3, and make sure to come back and do them. Still are responsible for doing them, because there are other standards that we have to make sure you're able to do. They will not be counted late because you didn't do them. The only one that would be counted late is this letter.
Yes.
Okay. So make sure that you get up to, I would go back to the 1.2.3, the soapstone, because that's what you have to do for the peer review. And you, Michelle, will do the soapstone on your own letter. So you could actually do it ahead of time. Doing it ahead of time in fact, that might be for everybody. If you do the soapstone ahead of time, you could maybe use that for the letter. It's just a suggestion. All right. So Michelle, do you have any questions for us?
No.
All righty. Okay. Well, then all you need to do is close the meet. And thank you so much for coming, Michelle. I'm glad we had a chance to chat with you. It was really fun. And thank you, Mrs. Paulson, for a lovely chat too.
I know. This is
we
great.
Should do this for NPR.
I totally feel like this is a new thing we should do.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you everybody later.